We are recording the 9:30 call this morning, so thanks for joining us. And I see Gloria Devine is here, and I don't know if Kim Dion is here. Yes, I was at the Bruins game last night, and now I promise never to go to the Bruins game again
Bad luck.
because obviously
It's your fault, Amy.
I was thinking of the two of you. It was an incredible atmosphere. There was a lot of hope in the beginning, and then a lot of yelling at the refs toward the end.
We were robbed.
We were robbed.
really
A lot
were.
of a friend texted me and said that somebody they were watching the game with feels like the goal was not like there was some controversy. I'm like, everybody here agrees. Here at TD Garden.
Yeah, it was terrible. Terrible.
You know, Boston, we don't make it easy on ourselves, right? That doesn't mean that we're not going to come back from a 3-1 deficit. Celtics tonight, I think, right? Yes.
Yeah.
It looked good last time. So that is your 9:30 call sports minute. And speaking of sports, we have our friends from Connecticut here, and we'll have to see if they cheer for
National champs. National champs.
That's right, the Huskies. But of course, in your intro, we'll want to know if you cheer for the Yankees or the Red Sox, depending where you are in Connecticut. We are so thrilled to have with us this morning our colleagues to the bit of the South. And I have known Commissioner Beth for a long time and just thrilled to have you here this morning with your team. So I'm going to turn things over to you. And if each of you could just tell us a little bit about you and how you came to be in your current role. And so Beth, I'll turn things over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Amy, the legendary Amy O'Leary. So happy to be on today. You've been such a mentor and friend, and we have a lot of laughs, as I'm sure you do on these calls. So great to be here. And it's wonderful to see another call like this in the mornings. We have these in Connecticut with the Early Childhood Alliance and SEIU and the Child Care for Connecticut's Future. So they make us better as an agency. So it's wonderful to see you have the same thing going in Massachusetts. I came to this role as a toddler teacher, child care director, Board of Ed member, House and Senate member, and then appointed to be commissioner of OEC. That's my speed time. But I'm going to turn over to Elena Trueworthy, who I've known for many years and is our deputy commissioner. Elena?
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be talking to people from Massachusetts. I grew up in Stoneham, Mass, and so it's a little bit of like coming home. Philanthropy as a Head Start Collab office director here, and then most recently deputy. And I'll hand it over to Jill.
Thank you, Elena. I'm so glad to be here today. I'm Jill Marini. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Cross-Agency Planning for OEC. I was born and raised in the Department of Defense child care system, went from a family child care provider to a lead teacher, to a training and curriculum specialist, to a director, to an installation director, to a regional director. And then we got orders from Hawaii to Connecticut. And yes, they were orders. Everybody's always said, why'd you come from Hawaii to Connecticut? We were ordered here. My husband did his final tour here, and I have found my home at the OEC, and I will turn it over to Eloisa.
Thank you, Jill. My name is Eloisa Melendez. I'm the lead planner for the Blue Ribbon Panel, and prior to joining the OEC, I was involved in local politics and working at a local nonprofit called the Women's Business Development Council, which is in partnership with the Office of Early Childhood, helping childcare providers with business support.
Great.
That was the quickest lightning round of where you've been and so many different roles. And just to double click for a minute, Beth had joined me and Maria Nocti and Betsy Carlin. We were doing a circuit of running for office, for early educators. And, Beth, your story of running, oh, Eloisa, that's too bad. When you toddler teacher to, appropriations chair, you have had this incredible story. And just, I remember you saying that your base when you first ran for election were the families that you served. And I think especially on this call to highlight that hopefully we'll have some people running for office, 9:30 callers. So anyway, thank you for all and we're so excited to hear your update.
Yeah, it's a great thing to run for office. And I have a PowerPoint I do sometimes called From Brown Bear to the State Capitol. And I have one slide that is legislators are like toddlers. I might share that with you, Amy, that you can share with the group.
That
But
would be great.
remember that slide?
Yes, I quote you all the time.
Being a toddler teacher has been the best training for my career, as a director, as a legislator, and now as commissioner. A lot of similarities, but I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go through this way too fast. Can you see the
Yep, we can see it.
screen?
Yep.
And we'll share the PowerPoint and are happy to come back if you have more questions. So I want to go quickly through sort of the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood, because we think that's part of why we've been able to make a lot of progress having an independent office, and then our mission and vision. So we're 11 years old now, and I would say this legislative session we finally we're able to get some bills passed that allow us to merge the programs and get to where we need to be. It's just a lesson that it takes time, but we can get there. And we came from various agencies that you'll see on the slide. And our mission is really, we've updated our mission in the past couple of years to be truly focused on equity and to make sure we have parents as partners. And we see our role as really removing barriers to build upon the strengths of historically disenfranchised people, to ensure access to OEC resources. And we know, especially from the Blue Ribbon panel listening sessions, that we have a long way to go. And my guess is you do in Massachusetts too. But we're proud of the work we've done, and we do believe that having a single agency just in early childhood is part of why we can do that. I wanted to just talk about the COVID response, because it's hard to talk about big changes in early childhood without talking about how COVID cracked us open and left open opportunities for us as a field. And to start by saying it was incredible partnership with Massachusetts at the very beginning of the pandemic, where you were working with a group called Third Sector. We were working with Third Sector, and you said, have our formula, have our information. And we were able to get funding out so much more quickly. I can't even think about how long it would have taken us to do all the work that you had done and then so freely shared. And we were able to maintain almost 99% of our capacity through the pandemic, where the average state lost 9%. And I think a lot of that had to do with us being able to turn that around quickly. So thank you, Massachusetts, because your system work helped our system work. And then I'm not going to go through all of these, but we rolled out a whole lot of programs with our COVID funds. It didn't all go out in grants. And this was good and bad. It made it more complex, but it's made significant changes. And what I'll focus on are the things that we thought maybe were one time with the funds, but we have been able to get funding from the state or CCDF or a preschool development grant to continue. So every program that gets subsidy gets a 25% bonus if they're NAEYC, NAFCC, or Head Start accredited. This makes a big difference when you increase the payment by 25%. I should just say that because we collectively bargain with Family Child Care, they bargain for a lower rate than the 25%, but we expect the next collective bargaining, they'll be going for what everyone else is getting. We've also been able to expand our subsidy up to 60%. We had a proposal to go to 65%. We still might get there. And then we have, for many years, we wanted to fund childcare subsidy for people in higher ed and workforce development. And it was always, no, 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 you can't do that. And then once we had a functional waiting list for our subsidy, our budget office felt comfortable saying, okay, you can do it because there's a waiting list. So if we run out of money, Connecticut used to just shut it off and on, and it was really destabilizing for the field. We don't love having a waiting list, but it allows us to add different groups onto the system without the budget office just having sheer fear. When I was in the legislature, the fiscal note was like $40 million, and it's ended up costing us less than $10 million a year. So, you know, the waiting list has been important, even though it's a real hassle at a level 2 where parents have to wait to get in. Did you have something you wanted to ask, Amy?
No, that's really an interesting way of thinking about the waiting list.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's really made a big difference that way. These are the things you find out when you're in a crisis. The other thing we really invested in our lab schools. We believe in lab schools on campuses. I know it's important to get people out in the community for student teaching, but we know that lab schools are providing a really unique experience. So we did some stabilization funding for them because higher ed's in a crisis too and cutting. So this was a way they didn't cut that. And there are a few other things you'll see here too, but I just because of time,
Yeah.
we've been able to, you get the point, we've been able to continue. But the crisis of childcare and workforce and the pandemic really, probably like Massachusetts, brought this to our governor's attention, and he launched a blue ribbon panel on childcare made up of various stakeholders, and we spent a year doing a 5-year plan. It was a sprint, and it was really hard, but it made a huge difference, and it really, brought the governor's buy-in. I'm going to ask Elena to talk about the critical supports.
Sure. So with the Blue Ribbon Plan, I mean, this was a major undertaking for our agency, right? And as we think about our state agency, we have areas in which we can move quickly, right, and be nimble, but we have areas where we just cannot, right, and be flexible. And so these critical supports really added the ability for us to move and to create this large statewide community engagement effort. So all the partners that are listed here on this screen were absolutely critical in different ways. Part of our engagement of Blue Ribbon Plan was really to try and center family and community voice to drive our strategic planning kind of decision making. So the role of our statewide parent cabinet and the role of our local parent ambassadors were absolutely key to ensuring that those voices were at the table and that input was used to design and develop the plan. And the role of philanthropy helped to fill the gaps where we needed, right, to be nimble and quick and potentially make changes. They helped to fund parent surveys that went out and parent community engagement effort. They helped to fund events that occurred, in-person events throughout our state. And also, the preschool development grant, the PDG, I don't think we can say enough about the role of PDG as it relates to helping us build our systems and to fund consultant support such as social finance. And one of the major partners is Social Venture Partners. They came in, they helped to provide overall project management, really strategic thinking and analytical supports, including data, to help drive some of our decisions as well. And as the commissioner mentioned, SEIU, our Family Child Care Union, and the advocates were critical partners in this plan as well.
We did have the members of the parent council join the 9:30 call almost right after the NAYC conference when we went on the morning walk with them. And it was incredible to hear about that. So that was already in place when so it was just, they were able to execute. Right.
It was, right? But to be intentional to ensure that those family voices are at the table is something that's of critical importance to do. And here's a slide just kind of giving some numbers around the total engagement that we have and had in the different kind of areas in which we engage. So parents, overall community stakeholders, including advocates, providers, system specialists, researchers, and businesses. Businesses were a really important voice to bring in to help to understand what do businesses need, want, and how they thought they could contribute as well to the Blue Ribbon Plan. And making sure that we're a small state, but making sure we got to all geographies, because what we heard from the rural towns is very different from what we heard from the more urban or city areas as well.
Yeah, we got the bill was like, sometimes it's hard to pass a bill when 2 words change. We completely restructured how our state funded childcare works and our Care for Kids rules with unanimous votes in both chambers. It's because we listened and the plan adapted and we invested time and energy, and the field could see the plan change with their feedback. So as you all look to plan, I think this message of all the messages is the most important, that you have to listen. I know my thinking changed so much through this process about what families need and how we can improve as a system. So the panel emerged 4 goals. None of these will surprise you in Massachusetts. We said number 1 is workforce. Early childhood workforce has to be first. We have to take care of that. We have to get to wages. And the funding is 4th. Obviously, you don't get to wages without funding. That's sort of the foundation. And our systems really need work to make them simpler for providers and families. I'll leave it at that. My guess is yours could use some work too. And then this trying to remember, we heard loud and clear from parents, like, you can't put this on our backs. We can't afford it anymore for childcare. And I think that for me was an important pushback as a longtime provider listening to parent stories. So these are the 4 main goals. And then I'm just gonna just use this slide to explain that each goal has objectives under it. And Amy, you have the link, and Eloisa will put the link to the Blue Ribbon Panel plan. So we had objectives and outcomes. So the panel could see it clearly, because these were not all early childhood people. So you have to keep it simple and clear. And the panel members were unbelievable how engaged they were. And this slide is, again, just to give you an example of how we kept it real, you know, to say, okay, panel, and okay, governor, here's what it means to a family of 4 in Connecticut if we can get to 75% of SMI. If that family has $24,000 more dollars in their pocket, they can buy a house, they can have a car, they can, you know, making it real for people was also part of our goal with the panel, because we can get so caught up in our early childhood talk. But when you say $24,000 a year for a family, this slide, I think, was one of the most important, but this took a lot of work to get this done. Social Venture Partners was key in helping us. So this sort of was eye-popping, and I will say the governor's team was not thrilled to see the cost here. It's the headlines were a $2 billion plan for Connecticut, but it would increase from helping 50,000 families to helping 80,000 families. And in the 5 years, you get to the rates. We did not choose to do, I'm so jealous of your bonuses, if I can just say that out loud, your program bonuses. They're awesome. That was not in the cards for us, as well as the amount of money, which I'll show you in a minute, the difference between Connecticut and Massachusetts. Your advocacy is unbelievable. But this is what it costs to get to paying at rates that will support kindergarten teacher pay parity. So at the end of the 5 years, you're serving 30,000 more families and you're paying at parity. And that was really important to us. And then this slide, if I could recommend, first of all, this is a little controversial, and I think you'll all understand. This is a slide that is just specific to Connecticut. And again, we're working, Social Venture Partners had all this analytical power, and they also did the governor's workforce. Time benefits at the bottom that you see, that's what we always talk about, the 13% return on investment, you know, because of the benefits of early childhood to the child. But up above are the things our governor was looking at. And recently in a meeting, which is haunting me, somebody said, you know, why aren't we talking about this as just the right thing to do for children? And I really took that to heart. And I think going forward, we're going to shift this slide a little bit and put a child in it and talk about, look, this is the right thing to do for children and their development. We're so caught up in this workforce debate because that's where business is, and we're a culture that just worships business. But we also have to remember to keep the children at the center. And I really took that criticism. It was dead on. You know, sometimes I get so caught up in getting to where we need to go and why and pass this bill and bring them on board. But the children, don't forget the children. So Elena, do you want to just talk about Early Start is our bill that passed that restructured early childhood in Connecticut?
Right. So this language just was literally passed last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. This was huge, and a huge thank you to the leadership of our commissioner on this. This has really been the goal of our agency when we first started. to really, we have multiple funding streams that fund early care and education within our state. And so this language is calling to consolidate 3 of our major funding streams, what we call child daycare, school readiness, and our state Head Start supplement, into one single state funded program. What we heard through the Blue Ribbon Plan was that the system needs to be easier for both providers and for families. And these multiple requirements, eligibility, whatnot, just makes it very confusing, and it needs to come back into one. So that's what we're doing. Next slide. So, but again, centering the family and the community needs in the development and the planning. And so we are really relying on and have been planning for this for months. You know, sometimes we wait until the legislature passes and then we start planning. We didn't do that this time. We have been planning through the leadership of our early care and education staff and through the engagement of our community in the planning of Early Start. And so some of these pieces that we're centering is around expanding access. So eliminating the family work requirement, ensuring that we're embedding socioeconomic diversity, and then supporting and really strengthening the role of our local governance bodies. In Connecticut, we are very locally driven in our towns and our cities. And so supporting the role of local governance as it informs and drives our state planning as well. And so we're doing a lot of listening, continual listening and feedback loops with our providers and our families, because this is such a huge change for our system overall.
Thanks, Elena. And then just to show you, this is where I compare Connecticut and Massachusetts. So we have 3.5 million people and a $379 million budget, which is 77% more than we had in 2019. So this is a huge increase. But your increase, because you've been able to hold on to those bonuses, is just enormous. So we really congratulate the work of you all, because it's not easy to hold on to those things post-pandemic. But we're really proud of this growth. And if this growth continued, we would meet those 5-year goals, because people are like, where's the money going to come from? Well, we've been growing that much, and we also need help from the federal government. And this is just a very simple listing of the dollars that have passed in the 24 and 25 budget and what they were for. And as you look down, it's basically to expand access, to increase rates, and workforce projects, whether it's bonuses or apprenticeships, and also this parent-to-parent outreach. So you see our themes of equity, expanding access, and improving quality throughout. And then just a word, and then, you know, I have a couple minutes for questions, but I can't not mention that during this whole pandemic and all these programs, we have launched our quality improvement system. The word rating is missing on purpose. This is a quality improvement system where we're providing navigators and supports. A member is a licensed program or a license exempt program that meets the licensing standards. Member Plus is a childcare program or family childcare home that has an approved program plan. That means we're on our way to accreditation and we have an approved plan. And then member accredited means it's a program that meets accreditation. And so these symbols are on our 211 website. We send out decals for the programs, but it's meant to change the mindset. It's not about rating programs. It's about supporting programs. And so we've built a supportive quality improvement system. And this just shows a website which is helping programs navigate to supports that can help them. So I know that was a little unrelated, but we're so proud of our work with Elevate and getting away from that QRIS. It's like, you have 3 stars, you have 4 stars, and get to, we're in a supportive environment, and licensing matters. So phase 1 matters, you're licensed and providing value for every phase. Okay, so that's that. Phew.
I think I know the 9:30 call is tough because it's only 30 minutes. I do think we would love to have you come back, or somebody come back, to talk about the quality work, because I think I know it started a while ago. It's, you know, many of us right now, our QRES in Massachusetts is on holds. And on the 9:30 call a few years ago, people were kind of like wistfully talking about QRIS. And it was really more about what you said, like people want to have high quality programs and they want to figure out a way to get that support. So I think that shift is so important and critical to, especially coming out of pandemic. We've been talking that we want to be on the we're not going back tour of
Yeah.
how we used to do things. We've seen so many of the policies that were put in place. So one thing that's interesting is we had a legislative commission that was created, an economic review commission, and it was created through the legislature, and the legislature kind of owned it. This panel was through the agency. So can you just talk a little bit about, and fun fact, I testified at the Connecticut legislature when Connecticut was thinking about creating the governance structure, because you're exactly right. To have an agency dedicated to this is critical, you know, because then you can say, we know where the funding is going and we know how it's getting out. But can you
It's
talk a little
tricky.
bit about
Yeah.
you guys having the panel?
It's tricky. I mean, the governor has power, the executive branch really has power to do this, but
Right.
we appointed the education chairs and ranking members to the panel to make sure they felt a
They were
voice.
there. Yep.
But that said, this year the legislature just passed a bill where they're naming a planning committee and a 10-year plan. Hopefully that will build on this. So they started referring to it as a governor's plan, and we worked very hard to say, this isn't the governor's plan, this isn't the legislature's plan, this isn't OEC's plan, this is a people's plan. And the only reason that language worked is because it was true. We had been in all their districts, we had listened to parents, et cetera. So I think whoever has control, you really have to give up a lot of control through that listening process.
So it's 10 o'clock, but so, you know, Beth, as you've seen different parts of government, what is your advice for advocates? And yes, we do have the C3 grants, and, you know, our House and Senate are still working on our budget. The governor, House, and Senate have all funded them at $475 million. So that's just for one line item.
Unbelievable.
But other kind of, as you sit in all these different seats, what advice you have for advocates? Because it can be frustrating. It can take a long time.
Well, I think you have to make sure your coalition is actively and purposefully engaging parents, because when I came in as commissioner, and I was an advocate my whole life as a child care director, I immediately felt the imbalance, which is why we started the parent cabinet. The imbalance of parent voice and also family child care provider voice. The whole shift in my thinking, a lot of it has been around the value and importance of family child care homes. For when you really listen to families and what they need, a lot of centers aren't meeting that need. So if you have families at the table and family child care at the table in an equitable way, your plan will be very different than if it's the usual advocates. And I'm one of them. I say that as one of them, that I was a center director. I thought as a center director, and I think so differently now after seeing our whole state and listening to all the different constituencies. So it's just about listening.
And I think the way that those slides are presented, we often talk about SMI and nobody knows what that means or what the numbers are. So even just seeing that slide was so powerful. 9:30 callers, please show some love in the chat to our neighbors in Connecticut. And we'll post the slides. I think as we think about this, our legislative session, we have a bill pending that our Senate passed unanimously. Our House and Senate have included parts of that in the budget. And so I think we'll know where we are at the end of July, but I think we'd love to have folks come back and talk about the quality piece.
Yeah, sure, we can do that. And I'm so impressed with our team. It took almost 4 years to put together, and just like you shared with us, we will share with you, and kudos to you in Massachusetts. I just spent the weekend in Provincetown, so I don't think there's a better place on earth than Massachusetts when it comes to getting away, and just really appreciate your work.
Thank you so much for joining us. We also recorded the call today, so we'll have that on our YouTube channel so folks can, I know folks are really interested in hearing about all the work that you're doing. We will send you the chat so you can feel the love too in Connecticut.
Great.
Thanks so much for joining us. This week we have 2 9:30 calls at night. We have Wednesday 9:30 call at night, and then no, Wednesday, 9:30 call at night in Spanish. Thursday is 9:30 call at night, where we're gonna feature the Boston Opportunity Agenda Workforce Report that was released out in February. All right, have a great day.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks so
Great to
much.
see you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.